Back tonight, Tahion in Focus. Thanks for staying on. Parliament's Public Accounts Watchdog Scopa conducted another oversight visit at the Road Accident Fund offices in Johannesburg and Pretoria. Scopa has described the situation at the RAF as shambolic and made worse by a culture of corruption. For more on that conversation, joined now by DA Member of Parliament and Scopa member Alfred Lees and NUMSA's spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola. Mazambane, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on, as your chairperson likes to call you. It's the second visit, and it's clearly continuing to expose the very same things that you saw the first time you were there. And let me tell you, after you went there the last time, 3 weeks ago, I spoke to the CEO. He says we are all kind of suffering from what he calls the Mandela effect. I'm not quite sure what is that, but he says we have the wrong interpretation about what the events are on the ground. He says, as far as he's concerned, he comes to Parliament all the time and he reports on something called APPs. Those are the performance measures that have predetermined objectives that he needs to meet. And as far as those objectives are concerned, he found the fund performing at 56%. In a year, he turned it around, it's performing at 78%. Second year, he turned it around, it's performing at 84%. Now, this year, he says when the audits are completed, it's going to be performing well above 94%. He says, what's the big fuss? Because he's doing what the fund is supposed to be doing.
Well, you know, Thabo, statistics are, as someone once said, are damn statistics, and you can make them prove anything. So if you're looking at statistics and APPs and who set those targets, you can make them look good or bad as you see fit. But the bottom line is that the beneficiaries, the people who are supposed to get the service from the Road Accident Fund, simply don't get it. So one's looking at tens of thousands of claims that are lying in cardboard boxes in offices in Menlyn, and we discovered yesterday in the Johannesburg office as well. So it's tried to talk about APPs. They're irrelevant. The service is what is relevant. On top of that, the Auditor General might well be looking at the APPs as they're required to. But the Auditor General also has a huge dispute with the fund, which has gone to court. It's quite outrageous that one state institution, being the RAF, taken the Auditor General to court because they don't like what the Auditor General is saying about the state of their books and the way they've done their books. I mean, basically the fund is bankrupt. It has been bankrupt for many years. It's hundreds of billions of rand in liabilities, both contingent and actual liabilities. And the CEO and people around him have tried to manipulate the figures to indicate that the contingent liabilities aren't as high as they really are.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that, but I want to bring in Phakamile here as well. So, Phakamile, the question around the consequence management at RAF and how it's conducted, right? So it was raised with the CEO to say you are conducting this consequence management maliciously, you are intimidating people and so on and so forth. And he says, no, I'm dealing with syndicates here. I'm suspending people in terms of the law. These are people who are defrauding the Road Accident Fund. And you cannot tell me that I must keep thieves just because if I fire them, I'm going to have capacity issues. I'll deal with the capacity issues by introducing some systems. But I've got to get rid of the thieves from the system.
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening to your viewers, and thank you for having me on the show. It's interesting what Scopa found in its oversight inspection when they were there yesterday. And even on that issue, where the CEO claims that what he's doing is rooting out thieves, there is definitely some alignment in terms of what Scopa's own remarks in the press statement and what our members and what NUMSA has been saying, which is that the CEO has a very dictatorial style in terms of how he's managing the fund. Our members complain that instead of him taking full responsibility for the failure of himself and other executives to run the fund properly, they are blaming workers for their failures. I mean, this issue of the claims, for example, the CEO has put the blame squarely on the shoulders of workers. You yourself, I'm sure, are aware of a court judgment, I think it was last year, if not the year before last, in Mpumalanga, where the judge actually found that the CEO and the executives of the Road Accident Fund should pay out of their own pockets for the mismanagement, for the slow turnaround of claims because of failures with regards to how they are running the fund to ensure that it's run efficiently. And this is effectively what workers have been saying, that they are being scapegoated for the failures of the CEO and the executives, that they are being dictated to and bullied by a CEO who refuses to engage labor properly. This was reflected even at the Scopa meeting on Wednesday, where as labor, we were actually blocked at the gate, where security were instructed not to let us in and not to engage Scopa. And that shows you the lengths that this man has gone to run away from accountability. Even that bizarre court case where he took the Auditor General to court in an attempt to block the AG's findings. Talk about a leader who refuses to account not only to the public, but refuses to account to Parliament for how he's running the Road Accident Fund. And we can all see what the effects are. The fund is in a state of chaos. It's literally in shambles under his watch, and he's just refusing to account for that.
So we did, by the way, invite him to be a part of this panel conversation, but did turn down our invitation, at least for tonight. But we're hoping to get him back on at some point later, maybe in the week. Let's talk about this issue of what he's challenging, the Auditor General. So I asked him about it, and he says, no, the members of Scopa, Mazambane, are making a political fuss because they are talking about an accounting issue and they don't know accounting, right? He says they have a right, according to Section 34, of course, to get legal recourse and on this matter. But they are using an accounting system that is of a company that is not an insurer, but a policy on social financing. So they're saying we are not an insurer. We don't have a policy. We don't sell any insurance. That's why we are using this system of social financing. And that's where the debate is between them and the Auditor General. And they would seek the courts to give them clarity on that. What is your understanding around their accounting system?
Look, Thabo, the matter is a technical one. And whilst I am an accountant, I don't wish to get involved in the technicalities of which way to identify the contingent liabilities. The fact is that for years and years and years, a particular way of doing the identification has been used, and the Auditor General has been happy with it. The reasons for the change, let me say it this way, the change would not have been implemented, in my view, if, in fact, the liabilities weren't so massive. I seem to, now speaking from memory, but they're in the region of 300 billion rand. So if the fund was doing its work properly and was meeting claims as and when they arise, and the contingent liabilities were in a more acceptable level, and the funding model of the fund was working, I can guarantee you that it's highly unlikely that there would be any dispute about how to value the contingent liabilities.
Yeah.
it is, in our opinion, and I think many opinions, certainly the Auditor General is not happy, that it's a way of meeting an instruction apparently that they were given, or the CEO and the board were given, to sort out the liabilities of the fund. So the easiest way to do that is to do a paper entry, a book entry, which really makes no difference to the realities out there.
Yeah.
And the court action was supposedly withdrawn after our April meeting when Scopa met with the Deputy Minister and the fund. We were informed that the Deputy Minister had instructed that court action be withdrawn. So I'm rather surprised to hear that.
No, he said we are sticking by our guns. We are not withdrawing that application at all. We are going ahead with it. So that's what he said to me. But so are you saying what he is, I suppose, posting as some of his successes? By the way, he says the question of REF being bankrupt, you are trying to pin it on him when REF has been bankrupt since 1981. It's not really around him. But here's what he says. He says, since it's being there, for example, litigation has dropped from 10.6 billion to about 3 billion. So the fund being litigated. He says they used to settle claims with no money, and that was sitting at about 19 billion. It's now sitting at 6 billion. I mean, are these just, putting a plaster on a crack when the crack is actually much deeper than it is?
Thabo, those are figures that are being thrown out. We still haven't seen the annual report for the year ended 2022 because there's this dispute. So these figures are being thrown out. I don't know what their origins are, but the fact is that the liabilities are huge. And what he fails to take into account, and I raised it yesterday, was that legal fees is one issue, and it's very easy. What they've done is they've fired the whole panel of legal advisors or panel of lawyers that they have been using. And so they're not dealing with the law, with cases. So what's happening with cases, and we've been trying as a committee to get this since April, is that cases are going to court and the fund is not defending them. So you're getting default judgments. I'm told by those who have the information that there are thousands and thousands of default judgments. And as you will probably know, when you get a default judgment, you're likely to get a cost order with that. So, you haven't spent money on a lawyer to go and deal with the case, but you're going to have to pay a costs order for the claimant's costs in court to get the default judgment. Now, we've asked again for the list of all these default judgments and equal details of all the costs orders, because I suspect that once you add up all the costs that have been awarded by the court against the fund, it will very quickly equal what the legal fees were previously. So this is all smoke and mirrors until we see the figures. We can throw out facts, and the CEO has a favorite expression, and I'm sure Paramile has heard it as well, and that's a fact. And that's a fact. It's a favorite expression. And it always worries me that if you have to keep emphasizing that it's a fact, well, why is this? Is there some doubt about it being a fact?
Yeah.
So, we heard all these figures and sections of the act were thrown out at the meeting. Just one sentence, completely out of context, trying to justify that he's doing a good job. Yeah. And we know the fund's been bankrupt for decades. That's nothing new. The point is that it's got horribly worse in the last few years, particularly for the claimants. The average time, we understand, for claims to be dealt with is now up to 5 years.
Yeah. He says that was the case. He says now the system that is put in place, actually the claims are sorted out in a year. In fact, when you put your claim, you get a response within 120 days. And he says part of the reason why it would take 5 years was because the lawyers would submit and, for example, leave out document and abuse the pleadings. They say, no, we must not submit that document. Then it takes time over and while they are milking the system. And he says just by putting the system in place now, he's saved the fund close to 20 billion rands that used to go to the lawyers.
Thabo, again, it's simply talk. When we were at Johannesburg yesterday, there are boxes and boxes of files piled up against the wall. We looked, and some of them go back to 2007. So to suggest that everything is now dealt with within 120 days is until I see the facts and not just listen to sweeping statements from the CEO and others at the board, at the fund, I'm not convinced. We need to see the facts. And if that is the case, if he's right, why then are there these large numbers of default judgments? Why is it that after nearly April, May, June, July, 3 or 4 months, why is it taking so long for us not to get a list of all the default judgments? We wait to see. The chair of the SCOPA correctly indicated that if those details are not provided within the next 2 weeks, that we will have to go to the Speaker and ask for a subpoena to get that information. So the point I'm making is he can make sweeping statements about all sorts of things, but we want the facts, and to use his words, the facts. That is a fact.
That is a fact.
I'm not convinced.
Do you believe this management is able to deal with this? Yeah, you can come in.
I think if I can just add to what Mr. Alflius has said.
Mazambane.
Mazambane. But honestly speaking, I mean, if we're going to talk about facts, let's look at the facts then. Let's look at the fact that workers at Road Accident Fund have no furniture to work on. Now, you want to try and tell me that is a normal situation? That it is normal?
He seems to think so. Let me tell you what he said. He said to me,
what is?
He said, what's wrong with boxes? What's wrong with files in boxes? That's what he says. What's wrong with files in boxes?
It's completely outrageous. There are
no desks, Thabo.
The real picture here, Thabo, is that workers don't have desks. Workers don't have chairs. Workers don't have cabinets and filing cabinets where really important, crucial documents with patient information, private patient information is stacked in boxes. It's literally a fire hazard to work in the Road Accident Fund building, because you have piles and piles of boxes that are being used as makeshift desks, boxes that are used as makeshift chairs. Workers are bringing in camp chairs into the office. I mean, where have you ever heard of such a scenario? This is an organization funded by the state with taxpayer money. It has buildings, it has offices, it's supposed to have assets, but these assets are routinely attached, including desks, chairs, and anything of value, because the claims process is mismanaged. So he can literally, he can spin the doctor as much as he wants. The facts, Thabo, are that the state of the Road Accident Fund it's in a shambolic state, and that speaks to the management. And unfortunately, the buck stops with him as the CEO. He is failing. He's refusing to take responsibility. He's hiding from SCOPA. He's covering up for his failures, and he's using every manner of excuse, including workers, as scapegoats for his failures to turn this entity around.
So what is the degree of intimidation that is being leveled at the workers? Because Scopa is saying that's what they saw. Phakamile, what are the workers telling you?
No, our members are deeply aggrieved because we are a trade union that is recognized at Road Accident Fund, and yet in any engagement, whenever they have formal meetings with the CEO makes it very clear that he's not interested in hearing from Labour. In fact, he has literally instructed in previous meetings that they may not speak, which is completely unheard of. And as I said to you on Wednesday, we were met with so much hostility from security. At some point, I was physically manhandled by security staff from trying to access the meeting room. We were threatened with being physically removed from the building. He told the security that we had no right to be there. There is a real attitude of hostility. And so really, I don't know how you can expect any kind of meaningful engagement when you have a CEO who really has got a real problem with being able to engage people in a normal, amicable manner. If you are actually trying to turn an entity around, you have to work with Labour. You have to work with employees. But his attitude is very dictatorial. And it was interesting to us to note that Scopa made those very same findings when they issued their press statement yesterday to say that the staff morale at the Road Accident Fund is extremely low because of the kind of bullying tactics that are employed by the CEO.
I appreciate you both. Let's leave it there for tonight. Yes. A quick one, 30 seconds, Mazamba.
A quick one, just to reinforce what Phakamile is saying there. I mean, when we arrived at Menlyn a couple of weeks ago, I was the first of the committee to arrive there, and I was barred from entry. So eventually I just pulled out my parliamentary badge and literally pushed my way inside to find that the deputy minister was indeed already in, although he'd also had a problem getting in. So, I mean, the CEO now denies, well, he didn't admit to giving the instruction that we should be prevented from going in. But it's the kind of thing that Phakamile has just been talking about.
I appreciate you both. Thank you very much for coming on. We'll reach out to him once again to come in and have this conversation with us. That is NUMSA spokesperson Phakamile Majola and DAMP Alfred Lisa there. Let's take a break. Still ahead, we'll speak to Action SA Michael Beaumont on the multi-party coalition agreement by 7 political parties. Stay with us.